case of Cat West. Cat West was born on February 15, 1975, in the small town of Davie, Florida, as the only child of Nancy and John Jonathan Martin. While growing up, Cat longed for a sibling, but her mother's health issues made that impossible. As a result, Cat became deeply attached to her dolls, treating them as if they were real, singing to them, and cherishing them. In school, Cat was well-liked, admired for her beauty and friendly demeanor. She was actively involved in extracurricular activities, particularly sports and dance. However, during her teenage years, signs of bipolar affective disorder began to emerge, marked by alternating periods of depression and anxiety, followed by bouts of hyperactivity, elevated mood, and agitation. Her parents didn't realize the extent of her condition until much later, by which point she had already turned to alcohol as a means of coping with her emotions. It wasn't until she sought help for her addiction that doctors discovered the underlying bipolar disorder. While she successfully overcame her alcoholism, managing her bipolar disorder proved to be a far greater challenge. She was prescribed multiple medications, which came with uncomfortable side effects, leaving her feeling unwell. Eventually, the disorder was brought under control, but Cat West had to continue taking medication. Cat dreamed of getting married and having children, but her personal life has been full of struggles, possibly due to the lasting effects of her mental illness and addiction. Despite these challenges, Cat West remains a charismatic and attractive individual, with many admirers. She is often the life of the party, radiating energy and charm in the spotlight. As a child, Cat dreamed of becoming a model and actively pursued that goal, attending auditions and experimenting with different looks. She was especially drawn to Marilyn Monroe, the iconic actress of the 1950s. Cat became a devoted fan, watching Monroe's films, collecting her posters, and imitating her distinctive style and image. Interestingly, Cat West bore a resemblance to her idol, which she proudly acknowledged and cherished. Although her dream of becoming a famous model didn't come true, Cat West's photos were frequently published in local magazines, earning her some recognition, a fan base, and occasional recognition on the streets of her hometown. Before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe to our new channel, where we uncover captivating and chilling cold cases that will keep you on the edge of your seat. You won't want to miss the twists and turns we have in store. Let's continue. At the age of 28, she met her life partner, William Jeffrey West. William was born in 1970 in Alabama, came from a typical family. From a young age, he had aspirations of a career in the military or law enforcement. As a diligent student and active sports enthusiast, he was robust, fit, and incredibly focused. In the early 1990s, William joined the U.S. military, initially serving as a military police officer. His dedication led to a promotion as a military recruiter, responsible for enlisting individuals into the Army and Navy. He was eventually promoted to head of a recruiting unit, spending 20 years of his life in military service. William pursued higher education alongside his military career, earning a bachelor's degree in public relations from the University of South Carolina. He then went on to study criminal justice, eventually earning a master's degree. William is a calm and goal-oriented person who likes to keep a low profile. He was a devoted family man, marrying young and having 2 children. After retiring from the military, he became a corporal in the police department of a university town, where he was responsible for ensuring the safety of the campus community. He approached his duties with seriousness and responsibility, never having to use his service firearm throughout his career. Cat West and William first met in the mid-2000s, when William was still serving in the military and married to his first wife. Despite their vastly different personalities, William is a quiet and serious military man, and Cat West is a bubbly and outgoing blonde, and they feel an immediate attraction to each other. In February 2004, William, a married man at the time, met Cat West. Despite their 5-year age gap and Cat West's struggles with alcohol addiction, but they quickly fell in love. William soon filed for divorce to be with Cat West, and in less than 5 months, they got married in Las Vegas in February 2005. After getting married, they welcomed their first child, a daughter named Lola. They moved to Sarah, Alabama, William's home state, where Kat designed their custom-built home, adorning their bedroom with portraits of her idol Marilyn Monroe. Neighbors described the Williams as a happy couple, despite their very different personalities. Kat West was known for her bold fashion sense, always striving to look stunning and attractive. She loved being the center of attention, often seeking compliments and admiring glances. In contrast, William appeared more reserved and serious, a trait likely developed during his long military career. Kat West's life is a complete contrast to her glamorous appearance and her everyday reality as a housewife. Despite her efforts to make it big in modeling, her career failed to take off after her marriage and the birth of her daughter. Focusing on creating a cozy home and raising her children became her top priorities. However, her domestic life wasn't fulfilling, and she yearned for attention and recognition. With the emergence of social media in the late 2000s, she began sharing pictures online. She was inspired by Barbie and Marilyn Monroe, but gradually became more daring and provocative. Her husband was surprisingly supportive of her new hobby, often serving as her photographer. Eventually, the hobby became a profitable business, earning her income through paid subscriptions. A typical evening found they shopping for prepared seafood, fine brandy, and absinthe from a local supermarket. They would pick out scented candles from a nearby store to set the mood for a romantic evening. Surveillance cameras caught them seemingly carefree and happy as they made their purchases, unaware of the tragedy that was about to happen. After a fun dinner and a few drinks, Kat West began transforming into her online persona, Kitty Kat. She asked Williams to take some intimate photos of her, first in lingerie and then without clothes. Williams agreed and took several revealing shots, which were later posted on Kat West's private online profile, accessible only to her fans. A romantic evening that seemed to end in a night of passion instead led to a tragic ending. The next morning, January 13th, around 5 a.m., a young neighbor of the Williams was on her way to work. Although the sun had not yet risen, it was light enough outside for her to notice something unusual as she passed the Williams house. At first, she didn't realize what it was, but as she slowed down, she saw a nearly naked woman lying motionless on the road. She also thought she saw someone standing on the doorstep of the house, but they quickly disappeared into the shadows when they noticed her approaching. During questioning, the neighbor was unable to definitively state whether she saw Kat West's attacker enter the house or flee down the street. The neighbor, who was shocked and unsure of what to do, hesitated to approach the body. After returning home, she informed her parents, and together they called emergency services to report the distressing discovery. At the operator's request, the neighbor reluctantly approached the body while waiting for help to arrive. She identified the body as Kat West and checked for a pulse, but unfortunately, there was none. Kat West's body was cold and stiff. Kat West was found lying face down on the sidewalk, wearing only a bright pink bra top. There was a pool of blood under her head. Nearby was a bottle of wormwood wine with some of the wine spilled on the road and blood stains on the bottle. A short distance away lay her smashed smartphone. Due to the quiet residential area, there were no other witnesses to the incident, which remains shrouded in mystery. Kat West's car was last seen around 8:30 p.m., and the time her body was discovered at 5 a.m. A key figure who may be able to shed some light on the events is Kat West's husband, Mr. Williams. The investigation is ongoing, with Detective Michael Melhoff being one of the first to arrive at the scene. When the detective arrived at the house where Kat West's body was found, Williams answered the door. He seemed anxious but claimed he didn't know what was going on. When asked about his wife's whereabouts, Williams said he had just woken up and couldn't find her in bed. The detective then told him that a woman's body, identified by neighbors as Kat West, had been found near the house. The man put on a jacket and followed the detective outside, where he confirmed that the body was indeed his wife. However, his reaction was surprisingly calm. He didn't show any extreme emotions, such as crying or screaming, which raised some suspicions. When questioned about his whereabouts and activities during the night, he said he had slept soundly because they had been drinking the previous evening. When asked what he thought might have happened to his wife, he simply shrugged and suggested it could have been an accident. The man also shared some information about his wife's medical history. He said she had bipolar disorder and took medication for it. He also mentioned that she struggled with alcohol and sometimes behaved erratically when she was drunk. He noted that she would occasionally jump on their backyard trampoline, but sometimes missed it and injured herself. A search of the house did not turn up any signs of a struggle or violence. However, some items in the kitchen suggested a recent gathering. 2 plates with leftover food, 2 glasses, and a half-empty brandy bottle were on the kitchen table. Under the table, police found Kat West's high heels and a pair of panties the same color as her bra lying on the floor. However, some bloody napkins in the trash and an open bottle of detergent raised suspicions. Williams claimed that on the evening in question, Kat West had been drinking heavily, which he disliked. After a photo session, he wanted to move to the bedroom for a more intimate setting. He took a short shower and returned to find Kat West still sitting at the table, drinking absinthe straight from the bottle and texting someone on her phone. Williams was angry that she ignored his requests to put away her phone, and he tried to take it from her. A minor scuffle ensued, during which he accidentally elbowed Kat West's face, causing her nose to bleed. Williams explained that the blood on the discarded napkins could have been the blood from his wife's nose that night. He stated that he took the phone from his wife and threw it out the door. Believing his wife would calm down and join him in bed, he claimed to have been unaware of what happened next until the police arrived at his door asking about Kat West. Williams speculated that his wife might have gone outside to retrieve her phone and brought the absinthe bottle with her to finish it. He suggested 2 possible scenarios. 1, that she fell, hit her head on the bottle, lost consciousness, and froze to death, or 2, that someone attacked her. However, he could not explain why his wife went out wearing only a bra without any clothes. He attributed this behavior to her being intoxicated from the absinthe. Williams's story raised suspicions due to its inconsistencies and lack of detail, which he attributed to intoxication. However, the investigation was hampered by lack of evidence and no witnesses. The autopsy revealed that the 42-year-old woman died from a severe head injury, likely caused by the absinthe bottle found nearby, combined with hypothermia. Her blood alcohol level was extremely high, suggesting severe intoxication can impair breathing and increase the risk of loss of consciousness. Initially, it seemed that the circumstances of Kat West's death were straightforward. She had been heavily intoxicated, gone outside to search for her phone, and taken the unfinished bottle of absinthe with her. It appeared that she might have lost her balance while reaching for her phone, fallen, hit her head on the bottle, lost consciousness, and ultimately died from the injury and exposure. The presence of the blood-stained bottle near her head and the phone nearby seemed to support this scenario. Yet, the investigation discovered that this explanation was overly simplistic and potentially staged. Experts determined that the head injury was caused by the bottle found next to the body. However, forensic analysis revealed that if the victim had fallen by herself, the bottle would likely have rolled away from her head, rather than remaining parallel to it. The bottle was found to have both Kat West's and her husband Williams's fingerprints on it, as well as some unidentified smudged prints. Further investigation led to a different conclusion. The theory presented in court suggested that Kat West and Williams had an argument. In a fit of anger, Williams allegedly struck her with the bottle, causing a fatal injury. Panicked, he attempted to stage an accidental fall and cleaned up the blood in the house, but failed to dispose of all the evidence. Evidence supporting this theory included a fitness app on Williams's phone, which tracked his movements. The app showed that Williams was active in the house until midnight and again early in the morning before the police arrived. This contradicted his claim of being asleep, leading police to speculate that he was trying to conceal evidence during these times. A neighbor who discovered the body recalled seeing a male silhouette on the doorstep of the house in the early morning hours. However, due to the dim light, she couldn't be certain if it was Williams or someone else. She also couldn't determine if the person entered the house. This information piqued the investigators' interest, especially given Kat West's online persona, Kitty Cat, which had attracted many male admirers who paid to see her revealing photos. This theory suggests that a highly devoted fan may have been responsible. As a homemaker, Kat West often received messages from various men, including some with inappropriate proposals. However, she kept her distance, and there were no explicit threats or harassment found in their communications. A few persistent fans who lived in other states were quickly ruled out as suspects. Despite this, mysterious footprints were found on the doorstep, which didn't belong to the prints were found on the doorstep, which didn't belong to the homeowners, but they vanished on the lawn, and their origin remained unknown. Friends, relatives, and neighbors described the Williams family as a happy couple, and he knew her online activities under the name Kitty Cat. While some might have seen it as unusual, he treated it as harmless fun. Their social circle was unaware of Cat West's online persona, just as most of her followers didn't know her real-life identity. Williams firmly denied ever abusing his wife, saying he loved her so much that harming her was impossible. However, they frequently argued, and a text exchange from January 12th revealed a heated dispute. Cat West criticized Williams for not matching her energy and temperament, suggesting they might be incompatible. Despite the lack of direct evidence, Williams remained the prime suspect. Following his arrest, his family and defense attorneys rallied to his defense, believing he was innocent. They insisted that he could never hurt his wife. After his arrest, Williams was unable to afford the $500,000 bail and had to stay in custody until his trial, which took almost 3 years. He was offered a plea deal, admitting guilt in exchange for a reduced sentence, but he refused, maintaining his innocence. The trial, which began in November 2020, drew significant media attention. This publicity put pressure on the judges and jurors. By this time, the possibility of a third party's involvement in Cat West's death was no longer considered. The prosecution argued that all the evidence indicated that Williams was responsible for his wife Cat West's death. They believed that, fueled by jealousy and intoxicated, he hit her with a bottle, causing fatal injuries. In an attempt to cover his tracks, they suggested he staged the scene to look like an accident and removed evidence from the house. In contrast, Williams's defense team claimed that Cat West's death was an accident. They pointed out that her extremely high blood alcohol levels would have impaired her balance and coordination. Cat West's mother testified in support of Williams, describing her daughter as eccentric but stressing that Williams loved her unconditionally and would never harm her. She also appealed to the court to consider the well-being of their child, Lola, who had already lost her mother and now risked losing her father. On January 11, 2021, the jury delivered a guilty verdict for involuntary manslaughter. As a result, Williams received the maximum sentence of 13 years in prison, taking into account the time he had already served. Notably, if he had accepted the initial plea deal offered to him, he may have already been a free man by now. Unfortunately, all of Williams's appeals, led by his lawyers, have been unsuccessful thus far. The case of Jessica Patel. Jessica Patel was born on September 16, 1983, in Leeds, West Yorkshire, England, where she grew up in a traditional Hindu community. As the eldest child, she developed a diligent and obedient nature from a young age. Jessica excelled academically, helped with household chores, and maintained a bright and cheerful personality. Jessica had a large social circle, but she was particularly close to a boy 3 years her senior, who was more reserved and shy. They often spent time together, and as Jessica matured, she blossomed into a beautiful young woman. Like many of her peers, she longed to find true love and build a happy family, much like the characters in her favorite movies. However, her romantic aspirations did not detract from her intelligence and determination. To achieve her goals, Jessica pursued higher education. In February 2002, she enrolled at De Montfort University in Leicester, and 4 years later, she began studying pharmacy at the University of Manchester. There, she reconnected with Mitesh, an acquaintance who coincidentally attended the same faculty. They initially had no romantic feelings for each other, but over time, it turned into true love. This relationship has helped Mitesh grow and become more confident in himself. He is also accumulating knowledge and becoming more mature. Mitesh was extremely kind and caring towards Jessica, showering her with compliments and gifts. However, their happiness was short-lived. Jessica's mother passed away due to an incurable illness, leaving her devastated. Mitesh stood by Jessica's side, providing emotional support and comfort during this difficult time. As a result, their bond grew stronger. Jessica confided in her sister that she had finally found a trustworthy partner. Mitesh seemed perfect in every way, and she envisioned a happy marriage. In February 2008, Mitesh asked Jessica's father for permission to marry her, following traditional Hindu customs. Although her father had reservations about Mitesh and felt that they were too young to get married, Jessica convinced him otherwise. They eventually got married in July 2009. The wedding was held in the beautiful garden of the bride's home. Initially, the newlyweds, Mitesh and Jessica, seemed like a perfect couple. However, things took a turn for the worse soon after. Mitesh's behavior changed dramatically. He became distant and cold, leaving Jessica feeling lonely. Their intimate life also suffered, and they didn't have any physical relationship for about 10 months after their wedding. This was very distressing for Jessica, who couldn't understand why Mitesh's feelings towards her had changed so drastically. Jessica tried to find fault in herself, wondering if she was the reason for Mitesh's change in. Meanwhile, she had just graduated from university in February 2010 and was looking forward to starting her career as a pharmacist. She has a good education and a promising career. However, Mitesh's attitude continued to deteriorate. He became increasingly controlling and suspicious, constantly monitoring Jessica's every move. In February, her family suffered another grief. Her grandfather falls ill. His health begins to decline rapidly, and death seems inevitable. Manal's husband does not allow Jessica to spend much time with her family. This was the root of the conflict between they. When Manal confronted her husband about this, he became angry and responded by punching her in the face. As a result, when her grandfather was seriously ill, Jessica was only able to visit him a few times. Jessica comes from a traditional Indian family where his word is the law, restricting her from making her own choices. She felt trapped in a lonely marriage. One day, she confided in her family about her concerns. She expressed her suspicion that her husband, Mitesh, was being unfaithful. She noticed that whenever he received a phone call, he would excuse himself to another room. Additionally, he often stayed up late, spending hours alone, which further fueled her doubts. In February 2012, Jessica's suspicions about her husband's infidelity were confirmed when she discovered romantic messages on his phone. Seeking help, she confided in Mitesh's cousin, with whom she had a good relationship. Instead of offering help or advice, the cousin blamed Jessica for her husband's behavior, implying that she was responsible for his infidelity. This response from Mitesh's cousin left Jessica feeling isolated and unsupported. To make matters worse, Mitesh also prohibited her from seeking comfort from her own sisters. It became clear that Mitesh was hiding something and trying to maintain his reputation and authority within the family and local community. In February 2014, Mitesh and Jessica relocated to Lynor, a suburb of Middlesbrough in North Yorkshire, in an effort to start anew and distance themselves from their family. They purchased a large house, made renovations, and later opened their own pharmacy. Jessica had hoped that this fresh start would bring positive changes to their relationship. While their relationship did improve slightly, one thing was still missing: children. For 6 years, Jessica struggled with infertility, and Mitesh made veiled threats that he would leave her if she didn't become pregnant. In October 2015, she decided to go through in vitro fertilization. However, the initial attempts were unsuccessful, causing her to become increasingly anxious and depressed, especially with the added stress of hormone treatments. To make matters worse, Mitesh's behavior changed. He became distant and cold towards her at home. He would only show affection in public, and even then, it seemed superficial. He was often preoccupied with his phone, and the tension between them became unbearable. She reached her breaking point and suggested they separate, confessing that she was unhappy in the marriage. Mitesh's response caught her off guard. He claimed to love her and promised that things would improve over time. He even suggested that having a baby would strengthen their family bond. Jessica believed his words. For a moment she felt comforted and listened to, and her doubts subsided. On May 9, 2018, Mitesh and Jessica Patel received the exciting news that 3 of their embryos had been successfully fertilized, with a transfer scheduled for the following month. Jessica was overjoyed at the prospect of becoming a mother and eagerly shared the news with her family. Tragically, their happiness was short-lived. A few days later, on the evening of May 14, 2018, Mitesh Patel made a frantic call to the emergency services, reporting that he had found his wife's body at their home. He claimed that he had left the house earlier to buy food and pick up his laptop from work. When he returned home, he found that the house had been burglarized and Jessica was lying unconscious on the living room floor. Mitesh told police that Jessica's skin was cold to the touch and there were bruises on her neck. He was clearly distressed, crying as he spoke. The police assured him that rescuers were on the way. When the officers arrived, they found Jessica's body on the living room floor, her wrists and ankles bound with duct tape. A grocery bag was nearby. Despite the medical team's efforts, Jessica died on the scene. The investigators sought to determine the motive behind the heinous crime. Upon examination, they found that the house had been thoroughly ransacked, with drawers and closets turned upside down. It was evident that the perpetrators had been searching for valuables, as they had even torn apart their bed mattress. The missing jewelry and cash further supported the notion that the primary motive was robbery. Jessica's husband, Mitesh, also believed that their house had been targeted by robbers. According to Mitesh's statement, on the day of the incident, he followed his usual routine, working a morning shift, going to the gym, and returning home afterward. His wife came home around 7 p.m. Later, Mitesh decided to order pizza and left the house at 7:44 p.m. Surveillance footage from a nearby pizzeria corroborated his alibi. Before leaving the pizzeria, he tried to call his wife to tell her he was on his way home, but no one picked up. Mitesh stopped at a pharmacy without notice, so he returned home later than expected. When Mitesh returned home at 8:50 p.m., he was met with a gruesome scene. His wife was bound, and their belongings were scattered everywhere. Neighbors was left reeling after the tragic event. This neighborhood is known as a wealthy and peaceful place and has never had a crime before. The autopsy report revealed that Jessica's cause of death was strangulation, with the attacker using a bag, bare hands, and an electrical cord to ensure her demise. Since there were no signs of forced entry, investigators initially suspected that Jessica knew her attacker and had let them into the house. Jessica's family quickly arrived and comforted Mitesh, who appeared to be extremely sad and lost over the passing of his wife. However, the police had their suspicions, and a thorough search of the house uncovered some crucial clues that would eventually lead to the capture and trial of the perpetrator. A health monitoring app on Jessica's phone also played an important role in finding the truth. 3 days after Jessica's murder, the lead investigator contacted her father, who was still near the crime scene, and asked him and other relatives to return home so as not to interfere with the ongoing investigation. The investigator promised to provide more information later. Meanwhile, detectives were preparing to arrest the prime suspect in the case, Mitesh Patel. Several key pieces of evidence had led them to this conclusion. During the search of the crime scene, police found a damaged hard drive from a surveillance camera installed in front of the front door. The device was discovered in a suitcase under the bed. Further investigation uncovered a hidden photograph in their nightstand that showed Mitesh embracing another man named Amit. Additionally, footage from a camera across the street revealed that only Mitesh and Jessica entered and exited their home on the day of the murder, May 14th. The footage shows that Mitesh returned home at 3:30 p.m. Jessica arrived home from work at 7 p.m., and Mitesh left the house briefly to pick up pizza at 7:44 p.m., returning at 8:50 p.m. Since no one else was seen entering or leaving the house, the evidence pointed to one conclusion: Mitesh was the likely perpetrator. Mitesh was the prime suspect in the investigation, but the police lacked concrete evidence against him. As the detectives dug deeper, they uncovered a shocking secret that Mitesh had carefully kept hidden. Jessica had suspected that her husband was being unfaithful, and her instincts were correct. However, it was not what she expected. Mitesh was hiding his true sexual orientation. His marriage to Jessica was just a cover, a way to hide his true feelings for other men. 2 years into their marriage, Mitesh met Amit, an Indian man who was openly gay. Despite their cultural differences, they men quickly fell in love and secretly met each other whenever Mitesh was away on business. Unbeknownst to Jessica, her husband was leading a double life, pretending to be the perfect spouse while carrying on an illicit affair. In February 2016, Amit moved to Australia, but Amit and Mitesh continued their relationship. Mitesh had a plan to become same-sex parents with Amit by using Jessica's embryos and finding a surrogate. Mitesh had informed Amit that Jessica was having in vitro fertilization and had asked if they could be together after this plan, to which Amit had replied that it would depend on the results. Mitesh confided in Amit, stating that eventually there would be no more obstacles in their relationship. In a message, Mitesh chillingly wrote, "Jessica's days are numbered." It was later discovered that Mitesh was secretly taking fertility-affecting medication to avoid intimate relations with Jessica. The investigation revealed that Mitesh's internet search history was reconstructed. He had searched for how to get rid of his wife, Hindu funeral, and procedure for obtaining insurance payments for the murder of a spouse. Notably, Jessica had a £2 million life insurance policy. After her death, Mitesh planned to claim the money and use it to buy a property in Australia. In the weeks leading up to Jessica's death, Mitesh had been actively searching for a new home, aiming to create a comfortable environment for his future family. Investigators analyzed their cell phones and found incriminating messages. They also discovered a fitness app that tracked the number of steps taken by Jessica's. The data showed that Jessica's phone had not moved since 8:04 p.m. However, 15 minutes later, the phone recorded 14 steps, suggesting that either Jessica had made her last movements or someone had moved the device. In contrast, Mitesh's phone data revealed high physical activity and an elevated heart rate in the period leading up to his wife's murder, which was unusual for him. Between 7:44 p.m. and 8:30 p.m., Jessica's husband, Mitesh, walked up and down the stairs multiple times, creating false evidence of a burglary by throwing objects around the house. Before calling 911, he went upstairs to conceal evidence, including a hard drive from a surveillance camera in the safe of the pharmacy he and his wife owned. During the police investigation, they found stolen jewelry, £25,000 and a couple of gold bars, which Mitesh claimed had been taken during the robbery. They also discovered a roll of duct tape similar to the one used to bind the victim's arms and legs. The torn end of the tape matched the piece taken as evidence from Jessica's body. To create an alibi, Mitesh had to go to his workplace the evening after the pizza party. Despite planning for years, he was remarkably careless and left a trail of evidence behind. Furthermore, DNA analysis found under Jessica's fingernails showed that it matched Mitesh's DNA. Mitesh had scratch marks on his neck, which he attributed to a fall. During the investigation and subsequent trial, Mitesh, the accused, denied any wrongdoing. He claimed that his interactions with Jessica were mere coincidence. The 3-week trial strung together the developments in the case. It was established that he attacked his wife as soon as she entered the house. She fought back and scratched the attacker but was eventually controlled. Initially, Mitesh had planned to kill his wife by administering the lethal dose of insulin. However, this method takes a long time to be effective and there is a risk that the plan will be discovered. To ensure a quicker outcome, Mitesh suffocated his wife by putting a bag over her head. To make sure his wife was dead, he strangled her with his hands and then used a rope. The prosecution presented physical evidence, including empty ampoules found in Mitesh Patel's laptop bag, which linked him to the crime. Mitesh brutally murdered his wife, Jessica, in their home, a place they had shared for years. The entire ordeal took only 20 minutes. He then brutally tied her up to create the appearance that she had been robbed. Following the murder, Mitesh went about his day as usual, even stopping at a pizza place and calling Jessica's phone. The news of her death left both families in shock and disbelief. Tragically, Jessica had been seeking help in the months leading up to her murder, but her cries for aid were ignored. Only her sister seemed worried, but they couldn't do much to help either. The jury deliberated for 2 hours before delivering a guilty verdict. On December 5, 2018, the court sentenced Mitesh Patel to life in prison, with the possibility of parole after 30 years. Mitesh showed no remorse for his actions, and it seemed that the only person he felt sorry for was himself. The family was still grappling with the loss of Jessica's death, remembering her in their daily prayers and cherishing the happy moments they had shared together. It is unlikely that they will ever forgive Mitesh for his heinous crime. According to Hindu beliefs, her soul must be reborn. Since she suffered a lot in life and was unhappy but remained a good person, in the next incarnation, she will be rewarded. At least that was a comfort to her loved ones. The case of Celeste Mano. Celeste Mano was born on November 30th, 1997, in Melbourne, Victoria, Australia. She was the youngest of 2 children to parents, E.G. Darrow and Tony Mano, and grew up with her older brother Alessandro. Although her parents separated when she was young, her father remained involved in her life, providing financial support and maintaining a relationship with his children. Celeste was a sociable and active student who enjoyed sports, dance. Initially, she wanted to become a lawyer and enrolled at the University of Melbourne to study criminal and civil law. However, she later lost interest in law and switched to studying advertising and marketing. In February 2018, she landed a job at a rapidly growing e-commerce company. She rapidly advanced in her career, rising from a call center worker to the head of a department in just a few years. She was considered one of the company's most promising employees. Celeste has always been the center of attention, especially among men. However, she is very picky about her partners. Meanwhile, one of her colleagues, Lua Isiko, has had his eye on her since she started working at the company. He is almost 16 years older than her and has shown no signs of career ambition, remaining in the same subordinate position for many years. Despite his reserved nature, Luis Isiako was friendly and polite. He often asked Celeste out, but she consistently declined. Instead of taking the hint, Luis Isiako chose to view her rejections as a challenge or a game. He believed that Celeste was playing hard to get and was determined to win her over. Despite her clear lack of interest, Luis Isiako continued to try and draw her attention through various means. Celeste finds Luis Isako's attention annoying, but she tries to keep her cool, hoping that he will eventually lose interest or focus on someone else. However, Luis Isako's infatuation with Celeste grows stronger over time, becoming an obsession that everyone around him notices. Celeste confided in a close friend and colleague that she would never consider a romantic relationship with Luis Isako due to several reasons. Firstly, she found him odd and unpredictable. Secondly, she was not attracted to men lacking ambition and life goals. Lastly, their significant age difference was also a factor. Despite feeling pity for Luis Isako, she knew he had no chance with her. Luis Isako's relentless pursuit of Celeste led to a critical mistake. He neglected his work duties. As a result, his productivity plummeted, which did not go unnoticed by senior management. Luis Isako received 3 reprimands and warnings before being dismissed in early autumn 2019. As he gathered his belongings in the office, he appeared on the verge of tears, clearly devastated by the outcome. Celeste is relieved when Luis Isako finally leaves her alone, but she also feels guilty, thinking that her actions contributed to his firing. Manal, as a department manager, thanked Luis Sacco for his years of service and escorted Luis Sacco out of the building. As they parted, he patted Luis Sacco on the back and sincerely wished him luck. The dismissed employee, Luis Sacco, came to a surprising realization. He thought Celeste was hesitant to pursue an office romance because she was his superior, and it might harm her career. Now, Luis Isako believed that there were no obstacles to their happiness, and they could be together. Overcome with emotion, Luis Sacco suddenly kissed Celeste on the cheek. Shocked by his bold move, Celeste was speechless. She quickly turned around and fled back into the office without saying a word. Luis Sacco misinterpreted her reaction, thinking that Celeste had feelings for him and that he shouldn't give up on pursuing her. After being fired, Luis Sacco created a social media account and sent Celeste a friend request, which she initially accepted. However, when he began asking her to meet up and go out, she politely declined and eventually blocked him. Undeterred, Luis Isako created a new profile and sent her another friend request the next day. Celeste tried to ignore him, but he continued to comment on her photos, complimenting her appearance and suggesting they would make a great couple. To limit Luiseko contact, Celeste adjusted her profile settings to restrict messages, comments, and posts to only her friends. Despite this, a week later, she started receiving romantic messages from an unknown number, which she suspected were from Luiseko. The messages included poems he had written, admiring her beauty and trying to persuade her to go out with him. This was particularly concerning since Luisa Seiko had never had her personal phone number during their time working together, and she had only communicated with him through work channels. Celeste initially tried to address the stalker by answering one of his calls. Celeste explained to him that there was no possibility of a relationship and urged him to stop contacting her. Unfortunately, Luisa Seiko was not receptive to her message and instead continued to focus on how much he enjoyed hearing her voice. Despite Celeste's attempts to block him, Luisa Seiko managed to circumvent this by calling from different numbers each time. Feeling harassed, Celeste eventually changed her phone number. But to her surprise, Luisa Seiko was able to obtain her new number within a week. Celeste had been trying to protect herself from Luisa Seiko, a crazed fan, for about 6 months. Despite blocking Luis Seiko's phone number and fake social media accounts, and ignoring his messages, the harassment continued. The messages escalated from romantic to bold and threatening, followed by demands to meet Celeste. Celeste had no idea that Luis Seiko had begun following her from work to her home, knowing her address. At first, she caught glimpses of Luis Seiko near her home, but Celeste assumed it was because she was too nervous. However, when she realized that Luis Seiko was actually following her, she knew she needed help. Celeste decided to seek police protection, hoping to obtain a restraining order that would prohibit the stalker from approaching her or her home. The police officers were unresponsive to Celeste's concerns, seeming to mock her request for help. They claimed that Luis Seiko had not done anything illegal, as writing explicit poems or fantasies in text messages is not against the law. Without evidence of Luis Seiko following were lurking near her home, Celeste was told to leave the police station. Celeste continued to be harassed by Luis Seiko on a regular basis. During the day, she would see his car parked across the street from her office, and at night, he would drive past her house several times. This constant presence made her feel uneasy. In August 2020, Celeste returned to the police station, this time providing photo and video evidence on her phone that showed Luis Seiko was indeed stalking her. A different officer took her statement and was more serious about the situation, expressing surprise at his colleague's previous indifference. He advised Celeste to go to court immediately, where a restraining order was issued against Luis Seiko, prohibiting him from contacting or approaching her in any way. Luis Seiko's sudden disappearance brought Celeste a sense of relief and freedom. However, that feeling did not last long. Less than a month later, she began receiving text messages from unknown numbers. The messages were from Luis Seiko, who initially begged her to retract his statement and drop the restraining order, arguing that it was interfering with their romantic relationship. Over time, his tone shifted from pleading to demanding. Celeste immediately reported the messages to the police, as Luis Seiko's actions were a clear violation of the restraining order. As a result, he was fined and warned that further violations would lead to severe consequences, including the possibility of jail time, if he continued to harass her. After this incident, Luis Seiko remained silent for almost 2 months, leading Celeste to believe that he had finally left her alone. Celeste met Chris Reedsdale in September 2020, and they quickly discovered they shared many common interests, life views, and goals, which led to a romantic relationship. She confides in Chris about her harassment by Luis Seiko, who has been silent for over a month but still worries her. Chris made a conscious effort to make Celeste feel safe and supported, showering her with care and attention. A month later, in early November, Celeste decided it was time to introduce Chris to her family over dinner. Her family welcomed Chris warmly. The next few weeks passed peacefully, and Luisa Seiko made no further attempts to contact Celeste. She was happy, spending all her free time with Chris, and it seemed that she had finally forgotten about worrying about Luisa Seiko. On November 15, 2020, they went on a date to a cafe, where they sat together enjoying each other's company. Celeste offered to take a selfie to capture the moment. Celeste loved the photo so much that she decided to use it as her profile picture on social media. By doing so, she also wanted to share the news of her new relationship and make it clear that things were getting serious. Chris also posted the photo on his page, along with a heartfelt caption expressing his love for Celeste. Sadly, this date turned out to be their last. After dropping Celeste off at home, Chris said goodbye, planning to see her again the next day. Celeste spent about an hour in the kitchen with her mother, Eggy, before going to bed early to get ready for work the next morning. On November 16, 2020, Eggy was suddenly awakened around 4 a.m. by the sound of breaking glass. At first, she thought the noise was coming from outside, but then she heard more suspicious sounds, including banging, screams, and commotion, which seemed to be coming from within her house. Eggy quickly got out of bed, put on her robe, and rushed to her daughter Celeste's room. As she opened the door, she saw someone jumping away from Celeste's bed and escaping through a broken window. When Eggy turned on the light, she was shocked to see her daughter lying in a pool of blood, covered in cuts and small shards of glass. Celeste was struggling to breathe, her eyes wide open and looking up. Eggy immediately called an ambulance and tried to stem the bleeding from her daughter's deep wounds while she waited for help to arrive. Tragically, despite their best efforts, Celeste passed away before police and paramedics arrived. The medical examiners found over 20 stab wounds on the victim's body, with the fatal blow being a wound to her heart. After investigating the scene and comparing it to Eggy's testimony, the police concluded that the attacker broke into the Celeste's room through the window and carried out the attack in under 3 minutes before the Celeste's mother entered the room. The attacker used a large butcher's knife, striking randomly, and the Celeste tried to defend herself, as evidenced by the numerous cuts on her arms. When asked if the Celeste had any enemies, Eggy mentioned Luis Aseko, who had been harassing the victim with calls and threatening the scene, as well as DNA on a fence he jumped over while fleeing, which was likely due to an injury to his hand. As a result, it was crucial to detain and interrogate Luis Aseko immediately, as he was the prime suspect in the case, and to verify and compare all the evidence and witness statements. Luis Aseko was immediately taken into custody but initially claimed to be innocent, professing his love for Celeste and insisting he could never hurt her. However, forensic analysis quickly proved him wrong. His bloody fingerprints were found both in Celeste's room and on the fence surrounding her property, tying him to the crime scene. Investigation revealed a prior restraining order, which prohibited Luis Aseko from approaching Celeste. Notably, the night before the crime, he bought a hammer and large knife at a local hardware store. The store's security cameras caught him purchasing the tools at checkout. It later emerged that he used these tools to carry out the violent crime, smashing through a window to enter Celeste's house and fatally stabbing her with the knife. The case against Luis Aseko was overwhelming, with evidence showing he had been watching his victim for a long time and knew everything about her. The final straw was when she posted a photo of her new boyfriend on social media. After that, Luis Aseko bought a knife and hammer and snuck into the victim's home at night to harm her. His actions seemed deliberate and planned. Luis Aseko's personal life was marked by instability. At 39, he had never married, still lived with his parents, had few friends, and had trouble holding down a job. He also had a family history of mental health issues, with a brother serving a long prison sentence for a serious crime. Luis Aseko's lawyer arguing that he needed specialized treatment rather than imprisonment. However, this claim outraged the victim's family, who feared that Luis Aseko would escape punishment. The psychiatric experts ultimately concluded that while Luis Aseko did have mental health issues, he was fully aware of his actions when he committed the crime. He had planned the details in advance, which meant he would have to stand trial. The murder trial is set for the fall of 2023, 3 years after Celeste's tragic death. In the years leading up to the trial, Luis Aseko attempted to argue that he was mentally ill and not responsible for his actions. He spent much of that time in a psychiatric ward. During the trial, Luis Aseko remained calm and detached, seemingly uninterested in the proceedings. He admitted to his guilt but claimed that his intention was not to take Celeste's life, but rather to win her love. However, the jury unanimously found him guilty on all counts. As a result, he was sentenced to 36 years in prison, with the possibility of parole only after serving 30 years. The Celeste parents drew attention to the fact that their daughter had reported the perpetrator to the police as early as 2020, seeking protection from him. However, her complaint was not accepted due to a loophole in the existing legislation. This led to calls for a change in the law, which would later be referred to as Celeste's Law. Lisa Maria Kaisa was born in 1994 in a large family where her 8 siblings also grew up. It was a large but far from prosperous family. Parents were busy with their own problems and did not show love and care towards their children. Moreover, there were rumors that abuse and violence were rampant in the family. The story in question unfolded in the year 2020, at the very time when the whole world was consumed with the fight against COVID-19. In one corner of Ecuador, quietly and unnoticed, truly terrible events were unfolding. Here in the small parish of Pifo on the northeastern outskirts of Quito, the protagonist of this tragic story was born and raised. Lisa Maria Kaisa, a woman with an enigmatic gaze whose life story became a true Ecuadorian nightmare. On that unfortunate Tuesday, October 27, 2020, Lisa sent several messages to the father of her children, David. They were words full of despair because their paths with David at that time had already almost parted. In these lines, she confessed her love for him and her unexpected new pregnancy. However, in subsequent messages, Lisa wrote that life was losing its meaning for her, and the decision to terminate the pregnancy was inevitable. Throughout the night, Lisa pleaded with David to come to her, but his refusal was resolute. His parents also urged him to stay home, and David took their advice. In the early morning hours of October 28th, neighbors in Lisa's home heard a faint cry for help. Looking out the window, they found a woman lying on the floor with signs of vomiting. The neighbors rushed to help her, immediately calling emergency services. The doctors and police arrived and found Lisa in a critical condition, but still alive. After administering first aid, she was immediately hospitalized. However, in the house, her children, a girl of 5 and a boy of 9, were found unconscious. The doctors were unable to help them. Their little hearts had stopped beating at that point. Authorities learned the identity of the children's father and contacted David Acosta, who upon learning of the tragedy immediately arrived on the scene accompanied by his father. He was informed that Lisa was in the hospital, and his children were found without signs of life. After several days of fighting for life in the hospital, Lisa finally regained consciousness. By that time, the investigators, guided by their findings, had presented the prosecutor's office with sufficiently convincing arguments to issue an arrest warrant for this mysterious woman. When she was released from the hospital, she was immediately transferred to a social rehabilitation center. The authorities insisted that Lisa undergo a psychological and psychiatric evaluation as her state of mind required further investigation as part of the upcoming trial. Lisa ended up in a rehabilitation center, and doctors and psychologists took up their work. In a conversation with a criminal psychologist, Lisa opened up about her difficult childhood where her parents fought and abused each other and their children. Her childhood had a noticeable impact on her state of mind, and moments of quarrels and her parents' divorce became an integral part of her memories. Such a childhood forced Lisa to go to work from the age of 11 to be able to study. The girl strived to escape from her dysfunctional family and build her future in a different way. The expert report also indicated that Lisa had been abused. She talked about how after several years of marriage, David, her husband, changed dramatically. He began to humiliate his spouse and then to raise his hand against her. On the day of the tragedy with the children, investigators working at the scene found several glasses with liquid residue on the table. These finds later revealed traces of epilepsy pills belonging to one of the children, as well as other chemicals requiring identification. Police officers thoroughly searched the house, and after noticing a strange odor in the kitchen, noticed a suspicious area under the utility room. They broke down the barrier and found a lifeless body wrapped in a blanket with characteristic signs of having been there for a long time. Later, further investigation revealed that the discovered body belonged to Jamie Yanchiguano, a 28-year-old who had been in contact with Lisa. Jamie had been reported missing by his family days before the gruesome discovery. According to Rosa Yanchiguano, Jamie's sister, he was last seen on October 18th. Rosa told investigators that after her brother disappeared, Lisa called several times inquiring about him. Lisa claimed to have received a text message from Jamie where he mentioned that illegal substance traffickers were holding him captive and demanding a ransom of $8,000. She strongly warned Jamie's family not to contact the police. This claim became a crucial point in a complex investigation as detectives sought to solve the tragedy and uncover if there were any other hidden victims. During her interrogation, Lisa revealed that in 2020, while working at a cookie factory, she met Jamie Iansaguano. According to her, they became friends. Lisa wanted to return to her husband, who allegedly planned to blackmail Jamie for money. David made it clear to Lisa that if she did not help him, he would divorce her. Later, David gave Lisa a white powder and told her to put it in Ziamet's food. Once she did, Ziamet fell asleep and never woke up. Realizing what had happened, Lisa, in desperation, tried to win back her husband, but failed. In her despair, she ingested the same poison and gave it to her children. However, the poison did not have the expected effect on her, and she sought help from her neighbors to save herself from the horror that had befallen her children. Following her testimony, investigators launched a thorough investigation, but no evidence of David's involvement was found. No one close to the couple could have foreseen that Lisa Maria and David Acosta's lives would take such a tragic turn. When they met, Lisa was only 16 years old and still in high school, a dreamy and romantic girl, while David was a strong and determined young man. Their friendship quickly developed into strong feelings, leading to Lisa's unexpected pregnancy. Although their families disapproved of their relationship, David's parents supported their son and welcomed Lisa into their home. In difficult times, David's family provided genuine support to the young couple, even inviting Lisa to live with them to ensure she completed high school. When Lisa turned 18, the couple got married. 2 years later, they were expecting their second child, a daughter. David's parents decided to provide the young couple with their own home, giving them an apartment where they found a corner of family happiness. However, over time, their relationship began to deteriorate. Both spouses were unfaithful, leading to mistrust and disappointment. Their once boundless love began to weaken. Lisa also complained of psychological abuse from David, prompting her to seek help from the police. Eventually, she was granted a protective order, forcing David to leave the family home. At this point, Lisa began to blackmail David, demanding money for the chance to see their children. In early September 2020, Lisa's life took an unexpected turn when her eldest son began suffering from seizures. In desperation, she took him to the emergency room at Baca Ortiz Hospital. After stabilizing his condition, doctors conducted tests and diagnosed a focal form of epilepsy, a severe condition affecting a specific part of the brain. Doctors advised Lisa to undergo further tests, including MRIs, and to consult specialists urgently. However, Lisa ignored these recommendations. A month later, her son suffered another seizure, and they returned to the emergency room. Reviewing his medical history, doctors discovered Lisa had not followed their earlier advice, failed to complete tests, and had not seen specialists, leaving her son without necessary treatment. They warned her that continued neglect could lead to legal consequences. Despite the warnings, Lisa disregarded the medical advice. A few weeks later, after her son's condition resurfaced, she called David, who was alarmed by her serious tone. She informed him that a social worker would visit to discuss to brighten the waiting time. Lisa offered him a drink. However, as David drank the drink, he suddenly felt unwell. His condition was worsening, and the social worker had not shown up. So David decided to go home to get something to deal with his discomfort. The next morning, David woke up in a terrible state. He could barely speak because his tongue was numb. Every step caused discomfort and his eyes hurt. His parents insisted on calling an ambulance. David was taken to the hospital where he spent several days. Tests revealed the presence of a psychoactive substance in his system. But given that he hadn't used anything of the sort, David began to speculate how this could have happened. Eventually, he speculated that perhaps someone had deliberately slipped him some substance in a public place. David was grateful for his life and realized that what had happened could have ended much worse. In early October 2020, Lissa made the decision to hire a nanny for her children. Her cousin Patricia recommended her friend Bertha, a responsible 48-year-old woman looking for work. On Monday, October 5th, Bertha arrived at the young mother's house. Lissa urged her to take a pill that she said helped prevent infection with the COVID-19 virus, an epidemic of which was at its height at the time. Claiming that it was a highly effective natural remedy, Lissa convinced Bertha to swallow the medicine and enter the house. They sat down to discuss the babysitter's childcare duties. A few minutes later, Bertha began to feel sick. She felt a headache. Her stomach began to upset, and eventually, she vomited. A short while later, Patricia showed up. It turned out that she had called her cousin repeatedly, but Lissa didn't answer, which alerted Patricia. She decided to check what had happened and immediately went to her house. Upon entering, she found Bertha lying on the couch who was practically fainting already. Lissa shared with her cousin what had happened and expressed concern. Learning that Lissa still had not called an ambulance, Patricia immediately did so herself. After a while, doctors arrived and sent Bertha to the hospital. The condition of the victim managed to stabilize. Doctors diagnosed poisoning with a toxic substance, which often happens when using various medications. Doctors decided that Bertha did not tolerate some component of the composition of the pills from COVID-19. A few months before this tragic incident, in June of the same year, Lissa's former buddy, Mark Escanto, had died of poisoning. At the time, the cause of his death had gone unnoticed. But now, given all these strange circumstances, Mark's case required additional attention. Investigators scrutinized the deceased's home and found Lissa's fingerprints on the glasses used the night before Mark's death. This fact added new evidence to the investigation, pointing to Lissa's possible involvement in the incident. But suddenly, a new accusation was made against Lissa. Her own family made a shocking report to the police. It turns out that on September 2nd, the family had a family gathering where Lissa offered to let everyone taste a drink of her own making. 7 brothers and sisters of the young woman, as well as their parents, drank the unknown drink and immediately felt sick. Fortunately, no one died, but the 56-year-old mother suffered a stroke. Lissa's father claimed that while the relatives were seeking medical attention, his daughter stole $1,300 from the house. Now the investigation included not only crimes against the children and a former boyfriend, but also an incident that jeopardized the lives and health of her own family members. As it turned out, that wasn't all. Investigators encountered another strange event. In May of that year, Jose Luis Herezo, a friend of Lissa's, was found dead in his home. A few days before, Jose had suddenly disappeared, and neighbors soon smelled a rotting odor, prompting them to contact the authorities. An examination of the body initially revealed nothing suspicious and was ruled a heart attack. But one of Jose's sisters suspected something strange and hid a bottle of alcohol found in the refrigerator. In addition, Jose's family noticed that some items were missing from the house. Turned out that Lissa and Jose were friends, and when the guy died, the alleged killer contacted his relatives by phone. With a distraught voice, she stated that Jose owed her a large sum of money, and she had to contact the family to repay the debt. This cunning plan did not work, and a little later, Lissa called Jose's family again, changing her voice to conceal her identity. Identifying herself as Jose's friend, she claimed that she was pregnant by him and now had to apply for child support. Although Jose's family did not believe these stories, Lissa was not about to give up and made a third attempt to deceive them. She said she knew who was responsible for Jose's death and offered to meet to uncover the details. Had she not been arrested on charges of killing her own children in Jamie, the list of victims might have gotten longer. When the media reported the arrest of Lissa, who had poisoned 3 people, Jose's relatives understood. They immediately reported their suspicions to the authorities, and Jose's body was exhumed for forensic examination to determine the true cause of death. The relatives were not mistaken. Traces of poison were found in the remains of the deceased. On December 22, 2020, a hearing was held for Lisa Maria Kaisa for the murder of her 2 children, whose names and photos were classified, and for Jamie Ianchiguano. The trial was conducted virtually due to restrictions related to the spread of the COVID-19 virus. Lissa had been in contact from a social rehabilitation center. The prosecutor's statement said that Lissa gave her children a toxic mixture of insecticides and anti-epileptic drugs. In interrogations, she claimed that she had grown desperate and could not leave her children with her husband David, who did not care for the children. In fact, she admitted that she wished them dead. At the end of the hearing, the judge issued the defendant a court pass and ordered her remanded into custody pending trial. The children's trial next took place in 2021 at the Pichincha Provincial Court. The prosecutor presented a set of evidence to prove Lissa's guilt. Among them were statements by David, who revealed the content of messages the wife had received on the eve of the tragedy. In one of the messages, she claimed that she would take with her what belonged to her, referring to the children. She said she didn't know where her children and herself would go, heaven or hell. But now she felt as if she was in hell. Lissa added that she doesn't expect her husband to forgive her because she knows he hated her, and now he will hate her even more. David also spoke about his unstable relationship with his wife. At the hearing, the defendant's reconstructed testimony was presented, stating that she took 2 pills that day, called for help, and then passed out. According to the reconstruction conducted by the prosecutor's office, the daughter died while still in bed, and her older brother tried to take a few steps to call for help, but fell and died. The conclusion of the forensic medical examination was extremely clear. The children died as a result of a premeditated crime. The deaths were the result of suffocation caused by pulmonary edema and intoxication caused by a mixture of epilepsy medication and other unspecified substances, presumably insecticides and disinfectant. The prosecution also charged Lissa with the death of Jamie Ianchiguano, whose body was found bricked up in the kitchen. The perpetrator was also suspected of attempting to kill David and members of her own family. The hearing raised the issue of Lissa's irresponsible attitude to her son's health after being diagnosed with localized epilepsy. The mother ignored instructions for further tests and follow-up examinations. And when the boy was hospitalized again, his condition was exacerbated by her own mother's negligence. Warnings from medical professionals did not change her attitude toward her son's treatment, leading to a threatened termination of her parental rights. Lissa's mental health investigations revealed her to be highly emotional and environmentally dependent. She sought constant attention and understanding from others and experienced severe anxiety when events did not unfold according to her plan. She also exhibited a tendency to self-harm. She attempted to say goodbye to her life at least 3 times, but was unsuccessful each time. Witnesses described her as insecure, attachment-seeking, exhibiting schizoid and erratic behavior. The findings of the psychological analysis also emphasized that on the day of the tragic events, Lissa acted with full awareness of her actions. After a long trial that lasted 10 months, Lisa Maria Kaisa was found guilty of the crime against her children. The Pichincha Provincial Court sentenced her to 34 years and 8 months imprisonment. In addition to this, she was ordered to pay David a compensation of more than $20,000. It was noted in the press that Lissa remained calm throughout the proceedings and only showed emotion when her children were mentioned. The Jamie Ianchiguano murder case, which began in August 2021, appeared to be unfinished. New details were revealed during the court hearings. Lissa admitted giving her friend a white substance mixed with alcohol, but claimed she got it from David. However, the investigation proved otherwise. According to a psychiatrist who interviewed Lissa, she did not want to take Jaim's life. She wanted to intimidate his family so she could then extort money. She did demand $8,000 as ransom. Experts called the plan disorganized, which ultimately led to the crime. In addition, forensic tests revealed that it wasn't that simple. Jamie was found to have poison in his system, and the cause of death was strangulation. The body was found with a shattered rib cage and wire around the neck. Lissa claimed that after her friend died, she decided to bury him under a back room and cement him in. The store owner's testimony confirmed that Lissa bought building materials during the days of Jamie's disappearance. After the parties' arguments, the prosecutor's office requested a new trial in April 2022. At that trial, an additional charge of extortion was filed. Lissa called Jamie's relatives, claiming he was being held by a group of gangsters and demanded $8,000 for his release. The defense relied on the lack of conclusive evidence that Lissa was involved in Jamie's murder. Nevertheless, she was found guilty and received a 22-year prison sentence, as well as a sentence to pay $5,000 to the victim's mother. While Jamie's trial was underway, the investigation of Mark Escanto and Jose Luis Arrezo, Lissa's alleged victims, was nearing completion. Mark Escanto was 48 years old, and tests conducted after his death revealed traces of the same substance that Lissa had given to her children. In addition, Mark was found to have severe inflammation of the stomach. The family's lawyer claimed that Lissa met Mark, offered him a beer, and then put the poison in the drink. A glass with Lissa and Mark's fingerprints, as well as a swab containing the woman's DNA, was provided to authorities. Alleged motives for the murder included jealousy and money. It is also known that Lissa had asked Mark to help her financially, and there is evidence that he loaned her at least $120. Mark was Lissa's first known victim. The final outcome of this case, as well as that of Jose Luis Arrezo, remain unknown. They may not have been reported in the press, or the investigation may not yet have reached the stage of being formally charged and brought to trial. At the time of her brutal crimes, Lisa Maria was only 26 years old. Her high-profile criminal case has become one of the most horrific and disturbing in Ecuador's recent history. These crimes made her known throughout the country as Dona Venado. Lisa Maria Kess is recognized as a serial killer in Ecuador. Her victims have endured terrible suffering, and their relatives have suffered unbearable pain. The charges include 5 murders and 9 attempted murders. Under Ecuadorian law, the maximum sentence she could face is 40 years in prison. That means Alyssa could be released when she turns 70 years old. It is still unclear what motivated Dona Venado to commit such horrific acts. Was her act the result of resentment for not getting what she expected in life? Many speculate that the motive was money, and in David's case, Lissa acted out of a lust for revenge, which led to the tragedy with her children. The most horrific part of this story is not only the number of victims left in the path of Dona Venado, but also the fate of 2 innocent children who could not have guessed that their mother, who gave them life, would take it away so absurdly and cruelly. On March 20th, 2020, in the city of Alua, Portugal, 20-year-old Diego Gonzalez went to meet a girl he admired greatly. Unfortunately, he had no foresight on how this seemingly romantic evening would culminate. The picturesque resort town of Albufeira, noted as one of the premier destinations in the Algarve region of southern Portugal, was Dee's birthplace in 1999. As an only child in a modest yet industrious family whose livelihood hinged primarily on the fluctuations of tourism, Diogo was regarded by his parents as an exemplary son. Acquaintances described him as decent, responsible, hardworking, and reliable. Additionally, he was an outgoing young man who cherished the company of friends and family. Diogo pursued his high school education in his hometown and subsequently embarked on a computer science degree. To support his academic aspirations and contribute to household expenses, he began working at McDonald's at the age of 16 in 2015. By the time he was 17 and still employed with the renowned company, Diogo's life took an unforeseen and tragic turn. One day, his father suffered a stroke, which led to him being in a vegetative state. The media reported extensively on this event, compounding their troubles that same year. As Diogo and his mother were grappling with this new challenge, another misfortune struck him hard. His mother, his unwavering supporter, was struck by a vehicle on her way to work at the mall, where she was employed as a cleaner. She was dragged several meters by the car and fell into a ditch. Sadly, she succumbed to her severe injuries. Even though the driver fled the scene initially, law enforcement officials were able to identify and bring him to justice. While awaiting legal proceedings against those responsible for both his parents' dire situations, it became necessary for Diogo's father to be placed in a specialized medical facility for appropriate care. His maternal aunt, concerned about his precarious circumstances, invited him to stay with her. However, due to irreconcilable differences that emerged after weeks together, cohabitation proved unfeasible. Subsequently, confiding in a friend about these challenges led to an offer from his friend's parents. They provided him accommodation within their residence located in a Luz Algarve neighborhood. This proximity alleviated some distress for Diogo, as living amongst familiar faces brought some semblance of comfort during such trying times. Despite being quite young, Diogo showcased remarkable skill in handling challenging situations through patience and optimism. At 18, he completed his degree in computer technology in 2017 and secured a 6-month internship at Vila Vida Park, a renowned 5-star tourist hotel. His performance there was noteworthy, leading the executives to offer him a technician role. In 2018, Diogo decided to accept this position, resigning from his job at a fast food restaurant chain where he had worked for nearly a year and attained the role of duty manager. He embarked on a new chapter of his life, anticipating numerous opportunities that would aid his progress after the difficulties he had faced. As Diogo began to settle into his new job and look towards a brighter future, he decided to purchase a car. He formed good relationships with colleagues, including Maria Malva, a 19-year-old security guard at the hotel, who particularly caught his attention. Like Diogo, Maria also came from humble beginnings and had encountered significant challenges. Her mother struggled with mental health issues. While her father abandoned the family early on, she never reconnected with him. Maria was passionate about martial arts and practiced karate. While she aspired to become a police officer, her application was rejected due to her tattoo. This setback led her to enroll in training at a security company specializing in various private security sectors. Diogo openly expressed his admiration for Maria from the start, but she did not reciprocate his feelings and was rather aloof towards him. Fabio Acosta, a close friend of Diogo's, mentioned that Diogo was infatuated with Maria. According to Fabio, Diogo's dedication to her was intense enough that he declined an attractive job offer from the Sheraton hotel chain in Lisbon because he did not wish to be separated from her. Additionally, when Maria was working her shift, Diogo often brought meals for her. As time went on, they became almost inseparable. Observers frequently assumed they were a couple despite there being no romantic relationship between them. Maria confided in Diogo that she wanted no romantic involvement, as she had recently ended a toxic relationship with a naval officer, but simultaneously gave him mixed signals. Despite this ambiguity, Diogo never abandoned hope for a future with her and continuously sought ways to be near her and show his affection through various gestures aimed at pleasing her. One day, Diogo was deeply disappointed when he stumbled upon a video on social media showing Maria kissing another girl on the lips. He felt upset because he believed she should have informed him that she did not like men and that this was why they would never be together. Fabio, Diogo's best friend, attempted to calm him by explaining that girls sometimes do this, but Diogo remained unconvinced. He insisted that she had misled him and that this was why she had rejected his romantic advances. Despite this disappointment, Diogo and Maria stayed friends. She continued to accept his gifts and invitations for dates. Many times, Diogo offered to walk her home, but she always mentioned that her roommate had a jealous boyfriend and did not want another man entering her apartment. Time went by, and in December 2019, Diogo learned he would finally receive compensation for his mother's death, which happened 3 years prior. After receiving the amount of 70,000 euros, he decided it was time to purchase a house, so he wouldn't need to keep paying rent. Diogo then shared this exciting news with his friend Maria. Shortly thereafter, Maria resigned from her job at the hotel. She said she could no longer tolerate her co-workers' comments about the supposed relationship between her and Diogo. Additionally, she explained that she wanted more time with her mother, who required significant attention due to a mental illness. Initially, there was no reason to doubt her explanations. However, subsequent events hinted that her decision to quit might have been driven by more sinister motives. This is where Mariana Fona comes into play, a 20-year-old nurse at the hospital who had a stable relationship with Maria. The two young women lived together in Mariana's parents' home, since they were not financially secure enough to live independently and enjoy their relationship fully. Maria found herself in this situation when she learned about the significant sum of money Diogo would receive. Interestingly, from that point onward, Maria started drawing closer to Diego. It appears likely that Maria shared this information with Mariana together. They plotted to deceive him and gain access to his bank account details with the intention of stealing his compensation money. One day, after Diego had repeatedly refused, Maria informed the young man that she wished to spend a romantic evening with him. This proposal was a surprising gift for the 20-year-old, who found it hard to believe his ears. After waiting for so long, the idea of being close to the girl he loved made him ecstatic. Their rendezvous was scheduled for Friday evening, March 20th, 2020. Diego was elated and had no doubts about what might have led Maria to change her mind so abruptly. Although Maria and Mariana shared different accounts of what transpired that day, the following details are based on media reports and official information. Upon Diego's arrival, Mariana offered him orange juice that she had brought herself. Unbeknownst to him, the drink contained a hidden ingredient, 3 ampoules of DIM, a central nervous system drug with anesthetic and sedative effects. Mariana reportedly proposed using this substance, which she had stolen from the hospital where she worked. The girl's plan entailed sedating Diego to access his banking information and manipulate his fingers to unlock his phone. Mariana allegedly waited in a car outside, while her friend executed their plan. She sent multiple texts to Maria, checking if the drug had taken effect, since it was acting slower than anticipated. Inside, tensions rose as Diego grew increasingly unnerved, without understanding what was happening. Attempting to calm him, Maria promised an erotic dance, but insisted on tying him to a table first. After several minutes in this restrained position, Diego panicked and pleaded with Maria to release him. Her demeanor turned aggressive as they began to struggle. Using her martial arts skills, she overpowered Diego, bringing him down and restraining his neck with her arms, yet cutting off his air supply. According to Mariana's account, Maria eventually summoned her into the apartment. Mariana found Diego on the floor and questioned Maria about deviating from their original plan, merely stealing his keys and taking his money. Upon discovering that Diego was unresponsive, the nurse administered resuscitative measures. Upon awakening in a highly agitated state, he attempted to attack Mariana. Perhaps recognizing another conspirator against him, he tried defending himself. Reacting to Diego's aggressive response towards her friend, Maria intervened by grabbing him from behind once more, bringing him down and constricting his neck again. In light of these events, both women's actions have been scrutinized as part of ongoing investigations rooted in available evidence and testimonies provided by those involved. Diego's life tragically ended at the hands of the girl he loved. His body lay in the living room of Maria and Mariana's house, where they immediately set about their planned robbery. They first cut off his thumb and index finger to unlock his phone, access a mobile payment app, and transfer money. This process took several days due to a daily transaction limit. The crime occurred just as NIDA-19 restrictions began, with remote working becoming commonplace. Diego was supposed to go to work the next day. The girls attempted to prevent his co-workers from noticing his absence and raising concerns. They sent a message from Diego's phone to an IT colleague, stating Diego could not go to work and needed a replacement. This message raised suspicion because Diego wasn't known for making such requests at short notice. When asked if everything was all right, Diego's phone responded affirmatively. Conversations between this hotel employee and others continued through Friday into part of Saturday, but the messages increasingly seemed uncharacteristic of Diego. One of these messages reached Diego's supervisor, stating Diego wouldn't return to work as he had met a woman from France and would be moving in with her. This struck the boss as odd, since Diego was known for his reliability and wouldn't abruptly leave his job. Seeking clarification, the supervisor tried calling Diego, but received no answer. Another message claimed Diego wasn't in a condition for phone calls. The supervisor responded that hearing directly from Diego would be reassuring. The reactions from Diego's loved ones to these impersonated messages led Maria and Mariana to adjust their strategy regarding his disappearance. They decided to fabricate a scenario suggesting that Diego had taken his own life and then plotted to dismember his remains for disposal. Maria later confessed their plan was inspired by the TV series Dexter, which depicts a forensic expert who eliminates criminals while erasing traces of his crimes by dismembering victims. These actions highlight how communication breakdowns and erratic behaviors can raise suspicions and lead authorities closer to uncovering criminal deeds, even when efforts are made to mislead those searching for answers. After executing their reprehensible plan, they placed Diogo's body in trash bags, storing them in the trunk of their vehicle. They then proceeded to an ATM and a shopping mall. Security cameras captured them hugging and laughing. Upon returning to their residence, they began the gruesome task of dismembering body. Diogo's torso was eventually placed in a black bag, with the remaining parts disposed of in a container. During these events at Mariana's parental home, Diogo's friends initiated a campaign to report him missing and contacted the authorities. The authorities waited the mandatory 48 hours before officially declaring him missing. Subsequently, the girls departed from the house. Maria drove Diogo's car towards the cliff near Cabo de San Vicente Lighthouse, with Mariana following in her own car. At approximately 2 p.m., Mariana discarded Diogo's torso off the cliff, abandoning his car nearby to create an impression that Diogo had ended his own life. Unfortunately for them, Maria did not anticipate that instead of falling into the sea, the remains would become lodged on a rock. The girls then departed together in Mariana's car. They drove approximately 7 kilometers to the Pergo do Inferno waterfall in Tavira, where they disposed of what remained of Diogo into the water. Shortly after this incident, Diogo's vehicle was discovered in a parking lot near Cabo de San Vicente Lighthouse. Reports indicated that 2 laptops were found within the car. Forensic police arrived promptly and conducted thorough land and sea searches. This led to the discovery of a young man's torso, partially enveloped by a black garbage bag, near one location along the coast. Simultaneously, at another coastal site, Pago do Inferno, a French couple made a horrifying discovery: Diogo's head. After extensive efforts from law enforcement officers, his hands and feet were also recovered. The investigators handling this case found several aspects puzzling, considering that Diogo appeared to be an unassuming individual who avoided unsavory company based on collected data about him. Further probing by authorities revealed that Diogo had received significant compensation following his mother's death. They uncovered substantial transfers from Diogo's account to Maria's account through monetary transactions, tracking methodically carried out by investigators. The detective's next step was to locate Maria and clarify why Diogo's funds ended up with her. The girl then attempted to persuade the police that she had killed the young man because he was attempting to abuse her. She asserted this as the reason she left the hotel before the incident. However, an examination of the text messages between the victim and Maria revealed that this was not true. She and Diogo had grown closer after Maria stopped working. During her first interaction with the officers, Maria claimed sole responsibility for planning and executing the actions leading to the fatal shooting. She emphasized that Mariana had no involvement in the crime. However, Mariana's account contradicted Maria's claims. The nurse stated that Maria confided in her a plan to steal Diogo's money, but intended to take his life as well. She wanted him to suffer enough to disclose his bank account password. The collected evidence proved sufficient for convicting both girls. Investigators had phone records, the deceased's cell phone, and ATM surveillance footage at their disposal. Maria and Mariana were arrested on April 1, 2020 and appeared in court in June of that year. The judge meticulously followed Maria's recounting of events, where she insisted on pleading guilty and denied any involvement of Mariana. According to her version, Diogo's body remained for 2 days in a car parked in a garage, and it was there that his remains were dismembered when Mariana's family slept. After hearing Mariana's detailed account of events, the judge repeatedly asked about her whereabouts during the dismemberment executed with surgical precision at the joints. The courtroom's attention turned towards Mariana. She anticipated these questions and stated that since everyone knew she worked at a hospital, they assumed she dismembered the corpse herself. To clarify matters further, she suggested using internet resources for verification. Given the seriousness of this cold, calculated, reckless, and brutal crime, both individuals received custodial sentences, as determined by the judge. A few months later, on February 24, 2021, the trial began. During her testimony on February 26, 2021, Maria confirmed that she initially wanted revenge on Diego for the alleged attempted violence, but stated she did not intend to take his life. The defendant admitted her intent was to humiliate the victim and verified that her friend had no relationship with the young man and was unaware of the alleged attempted violence. Maria also asserted that her actions were not motivated by compensation. The girls appeared in court together, however. They did not look at each other throughout the trial. Rumor suggests that after their arrest and subsequent jail time, they decided to end their relationship. The trial included testimony from several witnesses, including forensic expert Teresa Costa. The expert explained that the amount of DIPM found in Diego's blood was significantly less than expected from 3 ampoules, suggesting either Diego had not taken the prescribed dose or had ingested it many hours before his death. On April 27, 2021, the court issued its decision. Maria was found guilty of aggravated murder, accessory to desecration of a body, robbery, unlawful access, and fraud. Additionally, she was convicted of carjacking and possession of an illegal weapon. She received a sentence of 25 years in prison and was ordered to pay Diego's father €265,000 in compensation. Mariana was acquitted of murder but found guilty of desecrating a corpse and complicity in fraud. For this, she received a sentence of 4 years in prison. She was released because none of the offenses involved pretrial detention until final sentencing. The court concluded that Mariana's attempt to revive Diego demonstrated she did not intend to kill him. In reaching this decision, the judge took into account Mariana's confession where she expressed full responsibility for her actions. However, this verdict was not well received by the Portuguese public, who viewed Mariana as equally culpable in the heinous crime against Diego as Maria. Following the verdict, Mariana exited through the back door where her father, present at all hearings, awaited her. Both refrained from making any statements to reporters. In December 2018, a group of university peers brought 20-year-old Sander Deer to the emergency room. He was unconscious, notably pale, and his skin was cold and unresponsive to any stimuli, which left the doctors completely perplexed. Here lay a fit, active young adult without any history of illness, yet his body temperature was merely 27 degrees Celsius, indicating a comatose state. Medical examinations revealed that he had hypernatremia, an alarmingly high level of sodium in his system. Typically, an adult ingests about 5 grams of salt daily, equating to about 2 grams of sodium. However, Sander had a 60 grams of sodium in his body, surpassing the 2-month average intake for one person. The medical team questioned these so-called university friends about what had happened with Sander. They asked about his activities the previous night. The friends simply shrugged their shoulders, averted their eyes, and acted as if they knew nothing about Sander's condition. Clearly, something was amiss here. Despite the relentless efforts of the medical professionals to save him, 20-year-old Sander succumbed to multi-organ failure, a condition where critical body systems cease functioning. The autopsy revealed startling findings. The pathologist examined the contents of Sander's stomach to understand why a seemingly healthy university student suddenly died. To their astonishment and dismay, they discovered there was no food or water in his stomach over the past 2 days. Instead, peculiar items such as aquarium goldfish and heads of mice and eels were found inside him. This indicated that he had endured horrific experiences before his untimely death. The case of Sander garnered immense attention from online communities and media alike, rapidly becoming a topic of international discussion. Conversations erupted around universities potentially concealing the shocking misdeeds of their students and the impunity enjoyed by offspring from affluent families. This situation shone a spotlight on a student fraternity known as Rus. Established over 7 decades ago, with its symbol being a Flemish lion, this secret fraternity consists solely of male students majoring in law, engineering, and business, with around 30 active members, mostly hailing from prominent backgrounds. The family's Rus is considered one of the most prestigious groups at the esteemed Catholic University of Louvain in Belgium. Almost every student aspired to join this exclusive brotherhood. Each year, they accepted only 2 or 3 new members, adding to its exclusivity. Rumors abounded about the fraternity, enhancing its allure and making it even more enigmatic and elusive. It symbolized a kind of student aristocracy with significant influence within the educational institution. In the meantime, the student fraternity Rios resumed its activities. They prepared a unique selection of items for their annual initiation tradition for new members. This initiation menu included unusual starters, such as grasshoppers and cockroaches, followed by a main course featuring live mice and fish. The dessert was a combination of coffee paired with an illicit substance. A disconcerting image showcasing the fraternity's initiation ceremony circulated widely. In the photo, principal members of the group were dressed in warm outerwear like coats and cloaks, while 4 initiates faced challenges on their knees. In one startling display, an initiate had a pistol pointed at his head. Another faced the barrel of a rifle. This photograph raised numerous questions. What other types of ceremonies did this clandestine group conduct? What exactly happened within the fraternity's walls? Considering many members' backgrounds, sons of politicians, lawyers, distinguished doctors, and business leaders, one wondered to what lengths would they go to protect their offspring if a truly grave incident occurred. Sadia wasn't actually aspiring to join the Rios Brotherhood. Born in Belgium, he was acutely aware of his fortunate circumstances. His father had come from Senegal seeking asylum in another nation before Sadia's birth. Like many immigrant fathers, he sacrificed greatly to ensure his 2 sons could lead respectable lives. He understood that due to their skin color, his children would have to work doubly hard to earn the same respect and career opportunities as native Belgians. Mr. Diaz's father worked long hours at a factory, spent nights mastering the local language, and either found or sacrificed sleep to assist his sons with their schoolwork. His only dream was for his sons to succeed in life. From an early age, Sander conscious of his future. He realized that success wouldn't come easily. It required persistent hard work. Since kindergarten, Sander had a close friend named Ferry, who lived just a 5-minute walk away. They were inseparable. They shared interests such as biking and manga, and they dreamed of attending university, securing good jobs, saving money, and eventually relocating to Japan. They even made a pinky promise to remain lifelong best friends and one day travel to the land of the rising sun together. However, Sanda was never fated to see the birthplace of manga and anime. Beyond Ferry, Sanda had numerous friends. As a teenager, he excelled effortlessly in everything he tried. Whether it was solving complex mathematical problems or playing football for the first time, he amazed his friends with his natural talent. Though people often envy such gifted individuals, Sander was beloved for his charisma and approachability. His knack for conversation and ability to connect with everyone made it easy for him to make friends. After completing high school, Sander enrolled at the University of Leuven, becoming the first in his family to attend such a distinguished higher education institution. This achievement filled his father with immense pride, surpassing any dream he had ever envisioned. Although the university was just a 30-minute drive from home, Sander opted to stay in a dormitory. He chose civil engineering as his major and dedicated himself from the start to earning a master's degree in the field. Sander appeared wise beyond his years and was driven by a desire to make his father proud. His ambition was to graduate, secure a well-paying job, and enable his father to retire, repaying the sacrifices made for his children's future. By 2018, Diaz was in his 3rd year of the 5-year program. He was already focused on securing employment post-graduation, so he steered clear of the party scene. His concentration was firmly on finding a lucrative job to support his family and pay bills. Aware of the potential challenges his skin color might present in landing a desirable position in a predominantly European tightly knit industry, Sander was under no illusion about the difficulty of his task. Armed with high academic achievements, interpersonal skills, and unwavering diligence, he recognized the importance of establishing vital connections. This realization led him to consider joining the Roy Brotherhood, a group synonymous with prestige, social networking, exclusivity, and crucially, the connections needed for his career. In a world where not just merit, but also influential connections are highly valued, this seemed like a strategic move. Many members of the Roy Brotherhood hailed from well-known families. Sander's decision to apply surprised his friends, except for his older brother, who saw the potential career benefits of such societies. His childhood friend Ferry believed in Sander's natural sociability and friendliness, but was initially doubtful about these fraternities. Ferry even tried to discourage Sander from what he saw as a hazardous step. If only Ferry had known the tragic outcome that would befall Sander, he would never have ceased his efforts to dissuade him. For Sander, the decision to join Roy wasn't made lightly. He carefully considered both advantages and disadvantages before deciding to proceed. With only 2 years remaining in his program in 2018, Sander was among the 10 students who successfully navigated the stringent selection process of Roy. Among these 10, only 3, including Sander, advanced to the final initiation stage. The initial phase involved the fraternity's permanent members filtering out candidates who didn't align with their interests, character, or communication styles. Now narrowed down to 3, the real ordeal commenced. A grueling 2 months of evaluation by the elite student group, culminating in an extensive initiation ceremony spanning 2 to 3 days during this period. The new recruits were subjected to relentless and sophisticated ridicule without any breaks, completely at the mercy of the fraternity's members. Sander was aware of the harsh trials that lay ahead. He had heard tales of the brutal initiation rites. Nonetheless, he was willing to endure all the discomfort and repulsive challenges for a promising future. Just like the other 2 candidates, Jia understood the process would be tough, involving mockery and pushing them to their limits. However, no one anticipates risking their life in such situations. Sander had discussed this with a campus friend, a member of a different fraternity, who was unaware of Rous's specific initiation practices. This friend portrayed the initiation as merely a test of physical stamina, commitment to future fraternity brothers, and discipline. Although unpleasant, he believed it was a necessary and ultimately worthwhile experience. Sander found the mandatory gatherings intolerable, especially as he was compelled to consume excessive amounts of alcohol. More distressingly, as part of the initiation, he was required to drink the urine of fraternity members. He, along with the other novices, faced relentless verbal and psychological torment. However, Jia endured the most severe hardships. He was derided for his skin tone. In October 2018, a few months before the concluding ritual, the Brotherhood organized a significant event at the Student Union building. The aspirants were made to kneel, while established members took turns forcing them to gulp down potent spirits or several liters of beer continuously. Naturally, after ingesting such volumes of alcohol, the novices could barely stand, yet were still tasked with cleaning the venue in their disoriented state. They staggered around, mopping up their own and others' regurgitation. That evening, all 3 novices were obliged to clean, but the brothers devised a different plan. They determined that Sander alone should tidy up after the celebration, because historically, those with dark skin served whites. This was a particularly harsh declaration. Deer felt utterly powerless at that moment. He was resolute in attaining his objective. He knew this situation would eventually reach a conclusion. A representative from the Student Association tried to reprimand the young men for their remarks. But what could he possibly do against 20 wealthy, noble, influential, and pampered youths? They were unafraid of anyone and conducted these acts openly without any sense of embarrassment. The fraternity members saw themselves as superior to all and simply warned the staff member not to meddle in their affairs. Sander endeavored earnestly to gain acceptance, considering his future prospects. But at just 20 years old, he was still somewhat naive. Despite this dreadful event, Deer persisted in attending fraternity gatherings. Some might question why Jia continued to seek camaraderie with these individuals. His reasons were multifaceted. Firstly, he played soccer with some of them and interacted amicably. Secondly, Sander was acutely aware of the extensive sacrifices his father had made for his education and vowed to meet those expectations. He harbored hopes that the indignities would cease once he cleared the final hurdle. In Rose's 70-plus years of history, only 2 members had been of African heritage, and presently only 1 was surviving. A dark-skinned student had been inducted in 2015, and Sander was poised to be the second to undergo the ultimate initiation rite. The final initiation, also termed baptism, was about to commence. Everything the novices had endured thus far seemed insignificant compared to the ordeal they were set to face. On December 4, 2018 at 4 p.m., the initiation commenced. Sander, along with 2 other candidates, donned lengthy flowing white robes and ventured into the city carrying bouquets of flowers. Their objective? To sell as many flowers as possible. The one who sold the fewest would endure various penalties, such as drinking sour milk, birdseed, and inevitably forced alcohol consumption. Sander finished last, selling 30 roses fewer than his peers, which led to his punishment, consuming such into Diaz's struggle in articulating responses. Predictably, he was outperformed by the others and subjected to further punishment. At the end of this stage, 1.5 bottles of gin were forced upon him. His body, not accustomed to heavy drinking, began to react violently. His stomach contained nothing but alcohol, and his complexion turned ashen. He was unable to stand, speak, or move autonomously, teetering on the brink of dehydration and repeatedly losing consciousness. Astonishingly, all these events unfolded in a public setting. One fraternity member recounted that the second trial occurred right on the sidewalk in front of a cafe in the city square. Yet none of the bystanders intervened. They neither alerted the authorities nor called for police assistance. At 9 p.m., the third challenge commenced, aptly titled, Endure the Night. The novices were hauled back to the dormitory, where 18 fraternity brothers resumed their relentless hazing. The task was to consume as many pints of beer as feasible. By the trial's conclusion, all 3 participants had become unconscious. They were breathing, but unresponsive to any attempts to rouse them. Remarkably, their unconscious state did not exempt them from ongoing abuse. In line with the fraternity's customs, if someone fainted at a gathering, they were urinated on. A manifestation of perceived frailty and an opportunity for others to exert dominance. Proof of these acts was captured in a video taken at 11:40 p.m., which they subsequently attempted to erase. With the first day's competition at an end, the 3 new initiates were dragged to their quarters and unceremoniously deposited on their beds. For amusement, their water supply was disabled, possessions defaced with ketchup and chocolate, and their door locked. This action meant that should any of them regain consciousness after consuming such a lethal volume of alcohol, they would remain trapped inside. They didn't even have access to water to alleviate their thirst. This was just the initial day of the initiation at one of the nation's most esteemed universities. Yet the most distressing experiences were still to come. The following day, December 5, 2018, around 10:30 a.m., the fraternity members prepared for the final stages of the grueling initiation. They woke the 3 initiates, placed them in vehicles, and drove out of the city to a secluded village roughly an hour away. A fraternity member owned a small cottage there, hidden by thick woods, an ideal location to conceal their activities. En route, they made several stops to acquire items necessary for the ceremony. The students bought aquarium fish, eels, live rodents, as well as bird and dog feed from a pet store. Next, they visited a supermarket and obtained fish sauce used in Asian cuisine for its flavor-enhancing qualities. It's high in sodium with about 1670 milligrams per tablespoon, around 70% of the advised daily intake, and isn't typically consumed in large amounts. They also purchased duck eggs, sardines, clams, shrimp paste, mussels among other products. During one of these stops, they encountered an academic who noticed that one of the students apparently needed assistance. She voiced her concerns to the fraternity members and even suggested calling the police. However, the students convincingly reassured her that he was merely intoxicated and in shock. They assured her that the initiation had ended, and they intended to sober him up with a cold bath. Dismissing her concerns, the group proceeded to the cabin in the forest. The details of what happened next were reconstructed by police using recovered deleted video footage and scarce evidence. However, the full truth remains unclear. Over several hours, the 3 initiates were forced to dig a substantial trench into which they were subsequently placed. Struggling to keep warm, they found themselves surrounded by 18 young adult men. other fraternity members who filled this trench with freezing water and live eels. In Belgium, in December, the average temperature varies from +3 to 7 degrees Celsius. When initiates began to cold, permanent members of the fraternity urinated on them above as a twisted way to warm them up. At this point, Sander was suffering from dehydration and remained inebriated from the previous night's events. Even if he had the will to stand and leave, his physical state made it impossible. Under normal circumstances, to formally reject the initiation process, one simply had to ring a bell placed away from the trench, therefore forfeiting their place in the fraternity. The initiates could have accessed this bell at any time. However, in this case, the bell was either intentionally or inadvertently omitted, leaving Sanda without a way to signify his refusal of the initiation. His inability to stand or speak due to his condition rendered him powerless. The three inebriated and weary boys sat in the icy water subjected to the senior fraternity members' acts of urination and defecation. They were then coerced into biting off the heads of live mice and eels in the water and followed with fish oil. After enduring over 6 hours in such brutal conditions, Sander's body began shutting down and he started losing consciousness. He was extracted from the water, clothed in dry garments, and placed beside a fire. As he curled up on the grass in a fetal position for 2 hours, initiation rites carried on around him instead of receiving medical attention. The students documented the situation with photos and videos. While Sander emitted distressing sounds indicative of excruciating pain. The excessive intake of sodium triggered severe elevation in Sander's blood pressure, resulting in a nosebleed, and he became entirely unresponsive. At 8:57 p.m., a senior fraternity member eventually decided to contact emergency services. Following their advice, students transported an unconscious Sander to a hospital, but placed his body in the trunk to prevent soiling the car's interior. Upon arrival at the emergency department, fraternity members withheld crucial information regarding Sander's recent diet and alcohol consumption from the medical team. After leaving him in the care of the hospital staff, they departed with the intention of resuming the initiation upon his discharge. This action left Sander with no real chance of recovery. While the medical professionals conducted tests and endeavored to unravel the cause of his condition, Sander's organs began failing due to the severity of his state. He was transferred to Antpi University Hospital for its superior facilities. At Antpi University Hospital, Sander's heart ceased functioning. He slipped into a coma, and subsequently, the 20-year-old tragically lost his life. The primary cause of death was identified as toxic levels of sodium in his body, a direct result of excessive fish sauce consumption. The hospital informed the police, prompting an immediate investigation into the circumstances surrounding his death. By 10:40 p.m., the other two initiates who had continued with the ritual were also hospitalized. Upon learning of their children's dire condition, the parents hurried to the hospital. Meanwhile, fraternity members hastily worked to erase any evidence of the initiation. They filled in the trench used for the trials, cleaned up a room smeared with ketchup and chocolate, reinstated water supply, and purged their phones of incriminating messages, photos, and videos. By the time police arrived at the scene, there was no physical evidence left. However, investigators were later able to recover deleted data from mobile devices. Despite this recovery, significant hurdles were encountered during the investigation. The children involved belonged to influential families whose parents quickly sought legal representation. Though evidence implicating 18 fraternity members in Sander's death grew stronger, continuous obstruction from high-powered parents protracted the investigation. All 18 students wiped their social media profiles and limited their communication, speaking only through their attorneys. Following Sander's tragic death, Rao's fraternity was dissolved. The university imposed disciplinary measures on all involved, requiring them to complete 30 hours of community service and write an essay on tradition's role in student organizations. Remarkably, none of the participants were expelled from the university. The 18 individuals involved in the incident completed their education without significant repercussions. In response to this outcome, teachers aware of the situation authored an open letter advocating for harsher penalties for the group, but no additional measures were enforced against these students. The formal legal process concluded in July 2020. Following this, attorneys representing two members sought further investigation seemingly as a tactic to reframe the entire incident as a tragic accident and attribute blame to the deceased student for purportedly weak health. It wasn't until May 26, 2023 that the Court of Appeal delivered its verdict, finding the 18 fraternity members guilty of involuntary manslaughter and degrading treatment. Each was fined €400 and sentenced to perform community service. Additionally, they were collectively ordered to pay approximately €30,000 in compensation to the family to avoid impacting their future prospects. The students' identities were withheld. The leniency of the verdict for those responsible for the death sparked widespread dissent, leading to protest actions in various cities. Despite these demonstrations, no substantial changes have been reported as a consequence in this case. The perceived lack of justice remains a poignant aspect of this story. The case of April Jones. April Jones was born on April 4, 2007. The idea for her name came from her birthday. Unfortunately, she was not born as fortunate as other children, as it was revealed that she had cerebral palsy, a condition that affected her mobility. One day, April had been playing outside with a friend for approximately 20 minutes, but she did not return home around 7 p.m., as expected. Her parents had last seen her riding a bicycle. They went out to look for her and found her 7-year-old friend, but April was not with her. The friend explained that April got into a car with a stranger. Her friend was able to describe the man who had abducted April. He was wearing a green jacket and had blue or green eyes, brown hair, and a beard. Significantly, the friend mentioned that April had entered the car on the driver's side. This suggested that the car had a left-hand steering wheel, which is typical in the UK. The police responded promptly, arriving at the scene 8 minutes after the emergency call. They interviewed anyone who might have information about April's disappearance, but the family could not recall any unusual events that day. Earlier, April had attended her swimming class and was allowed to play outside with her friends, which was a typical routine. The news of April's disappearance spread rapidly through the neighborhood, and many locals left their homes to assist in the search. While the community's efforts were well-intentioned, they made the police's job more challenging as the officers had to go door to door to gather information, but many residents were out searching. By the evening of October 1st, the authorities had released additional details about April's disappearance, including what she was wearing, a school polo shirt, and a purple coat. More than 100 people had gathered to support the police in their search efforts. Their expertise can be very useful in locating her. Not only local residents showed up, but also a large number of volunteers from England who crossed the border into Wales to offer their support. Several people from South Wales also traveled up to assist. The search would not be easy as the area around the town was surrounded by mountains, waterfalls, gorges, dense forests, uneven ground, and thick woodlands for miles. Additionally, it was a chilly, overcast autumn evening, and it was raining heavily outside. To ensure the volunteers' safety, the police had to carefully organize their efforts. Several volunteer search teams were now covering an area of about 60 square kilometers around 3:30 in the morning, 8 hours after the first police contact. The volunteers had been diligently navigating the harsh Welsh countryside. Despite conducting searches throughout the night, there was still no trace of April as of October 12. The police in Wales have now issued a child rescue notice, a nationwide alert for police agencies in the UK, requesting that they ensure their officers have a description of April and the man who abducted her. This was the first time the entire nation had heard the child rescue alarm. The media was now putting tremendous pressure on the police 14 hours after April had disappeared to provide every piece of information they had. It also questioned the way the police handled the probe. After taking over the investigation, Detective Superintendent Andy John began the public and media with as many updates as he could. He also placed barricades and instructed his officers to stop any approaching vehicles. Posters with an image of April, who was missing, were displayed in the hope that it would jog someone's memory. People living nearby, as well as those residing farther away, had been providing the police with various reports, as is common in investigations of this nature. Numerous locals identified a man who did match April's kidnapper, Mark Bridger. In general, a man from the area named Bridger was a Land Rover driver. His eyes were blue, he had short facial hair, and above all, he drove a left-hand drive car. Several witnesses claimed to have seen Bridger or his car in the vicinity when April vanished. They found Bridger's last known address and repeatedly tried to contact it, but neither he nor April Jones were there. Bridger had no prior history of legal troubles. Given the large number of volunteers involved in the search, it was impossible to verify the claims made by some residents that Bridger had participated in the initial search for April's disappearance at night. With the limited information available to them and reports from the surrounding community about Bridger's apparent disappearance, the police focused all of their efforts on finding him. Helicopters hovered above the scene, and the police conducted a thorough search of all possible locations for him. They learned that Bridger had just moved into a brand new cottage named Mount Pleasant. Upon their arrival, there were no visible signs of life, and the property was devoid of any automobiles. They went into the cottage and called April's name, but she didn't answer. It was unclear at the moment if Bridger had been hiding from the authorities. A police helicopter had earlier seen him walking his dog near April's home, having apparently tried to disguise himself by shaving his head and beard. Police cornered and questioned him. The policeman questioned, "Where is she?" Bridget just answered, "It was an accident. I crushed her with my car. I don't know where she is." Officers reported that Bridget was very emotional throughout the arrest. The arresting officers read him his rights, which included the following. "You do not have to say anything, but anything you say may be used as evidence." Oddly enough, Bridger was eager to converse, though he was not required to speak. The officers reiterated that he was free to do so. He informed them, "I've been looking for her all day and night on foot. My car is in the garage. It is a left-hand drive Land Rover Discovery. I didn't abduct her. I tried my best to revive her, then panicked. I only knew her name this morning when I saw the news on the television. I just wish I could remember where I'd put her. There was no life in her. She was just on the seat. I want to say sorry to the family." They took Bridger to the closest police station. In the meantime, back in April's hometown, police units, search teams, volunteers, and mountain rescuers kept searching every square inch of the Welsh countryside for April. Still, despite everyone's best efforts, they were unable to locate her. Along with the emergency services staff who worked just as hard and determinedly, hundreds of volunteers from across the nation stayed out all night, slept for a few hours, and then resumed their search. The police had received over 600 texts from people volunteering their services and proposing locations to search. Because of this, the police had a large number of volunteers to assist them in their search. And because of their local expertise, they were able to check over 20 distinct areas extensively. The people can occasionally obstruct this kind of investigation. Still, local expertise is essential in remote places like this one, and the police needed all the assistance they could get. At this point, detectives had taken Mark Bridger into custody and were questioning him. Unusually for a man of his standing, he spoke without hesitation. On the contrary, he talked candidly about what had transpired. Right away, he said, "I don't know where she is. Yesterday, I came down to see my daughter's teacher. She had parents' evening, and I then parked up opposite my girlfriend's house, which I believe is not far away from April's mother and father's house. Stupid. I'd had a few to drink, and there were two girls on their bikes. I remember the dark-headed girl came behind the car. I looked to see where the other girl was, and I couldn't see this other little girl. And the next minute, the bike was there." Bridger acknowledged that he was in the vicinity at the time and acknowledged hitting April with his automobile while intoxicated when she was riding her bike. Mark Bridger insists that he never intended to harm April, even though he acknowledges that he was aware of his error. Instead, he maintains that he took off with her in his car. He needed to bring her to the hospital right away, and that's what he realized. "It's okay, Mark. The color had gone out of her. Okay. Her lips were purple. Paul and CRR are friends of mine, and I've killed their daughter." Effective then, without hesitation, Bridger acknowledges that his actions that evening caused April Jones to die. He even goes so far as to say that her parents were friends. However, Bridger's memory tends to deteriorate following the submission. He has been relatively open about his involvement thus far. Actually, these officers may have never had an easier time getting a confession from someone. Bridger can't recall anything about what he did with April's body though. Following her confession, despite the police's repeated attempts to question him, Bridger's unexpected episode of amnesia persisted. And I'm in my house, and she's not there being upstairs, and I can't find her. I wouldn't have ditched her. I know that I wouldn't have. I'd have put her somewhere. With Mark Bridger, the cops have been quite cautious thus far. He'd been entirely honest with them. They can make him clam up with aggressive interrogation, but now they start to question his sincerity. The police were aware that there was very little likelihood that Bridger's memory would be blank at the critical moment when April's body vanished. The pressure increased as the cops questioned him. Even though it is evident that he was lying, he persisted in telling his story and got even more upset. In fact, the cops started to wonder if April was dead at all. Was there anything that Mark Bridger was saying that they could genuinely believe? The police decided to give Bridger a platform to give us account of what happened on Tuesday. The day he was holed in, however, the police used it as an opportunity to get more information out of him. You tell me that when you get out of your vehicle, you look underneath the vehicle and you see April. Yes. Although Bridger insisted that he had run over April, the police received evidence from April's 7-year-old companion that April was okay and had cheerfully gotten into Bridger's car and was grinning. Who would lie like that to a 7-year-old? In actuality, they would not have any cause to, nor would they choose to. We have a witness that was present. This person says that April got into the Land Rover via the driver's door, which on a normal car would be the right-hand side. But that's really the passenger side door on your car. That is a complete fabrication and lies. Can't have happened. Bridger shifted his tone. It was apparent he was unaware that the police had a witness, albeit a 7-year-old one who saw it all. It was clear that the information contradicted his account of events, and he was upset. Regardless of his emotional condition, Bridger remained resilient to the various methods of inquiry, and his version of events held steady. He showed no signs of backing down. The detectives did something. They brought in Dr. Joe Sullivan, one of the world's foremost authorities on criminal body language and conduct. Dr. Sullivan did more than just watch the Bridger interviews. He also went to his house. He wanted to know everything there was to know about this individual in order to create a psychological profile. What he found astounded him. Bridger kept knives, handcuffs, and a shotgun, both hidden and on display at his house. Moreover, he was employed at a slaughterhouse. According to Dr. Sullivan, Bridger was a fantasist who thought of himself character akin to Rambo. Stated differently, he was not part of the real world. In defiance of Dr. Sullivan's guidance, the police chose to approach their inquiry in a paternalistic manner. After all, Bridger was a father of 6. Bridger was not going to alter his claim now. Their only chance was with the forensic specialists thoroughly searching Bridger's house. The teams at the house did manage to devise a solution, though. They may have found anyone's blood. They found little specks of it in the restroom. It's possible that Bridger cut himself shaving. It was just that the police were ignorant at this time. After submitting the samples to the laboratory, it can take up to 24 hours to receive the findings. After the police took him in, disregarding his advice, Dr. Sullivan told the officers what he believed Bridget to be. He was unlikely to experience an enormous amount of empathy or have any major sense of guilt about what he had done. Of course, he will inevitably try to present himself as someone who does have those characteristics. But the sense that I had from the information we had gathered, even at that time, was that this is a man who is not going to respond to an appeal to his better nature. According to Dr. Sullivan, there was little need to attempt to appeal to Bridger's better nature. He didn't have one, and he wasn't going to respond to any police appeals for regret, sympathy, or guilt. Now that the police had taken Dr. Sullivan's advice to heart, Bridger was under increased strain on suspicion of murder. They detained him again right away. It was a shocking shock. Bridger turned completely pale. The police had also found explicit photos of children on his laptop. The reason for his second arrest was that he had offensive pictures of kids. The net was getting closer. Bridger now thought the police had more information than they had disclosed. April's parents were unconcerned, even though Bridger seemed to be losing control of the situation. 3 days after April had disappeared on that fateful Monday night, that the police had given up on locating April alive. It's not an abduction case anymore. It's a murder. Naturally, the police kept this knowledge from Bridger. Still, they also made the decision to advise the numerous volunteers who had put in a lot of effort to locate April that it was time for them to head home and leave the situation to the experts. This suggestion met with stiff resistance as hundreds of exhausted volunteers, many of whom were crying. As they departed the site, they had little to show for their efforts. On Friday, for days after April's disappearance, police search teams were out in full force, scouring the area for any clues. Forensic investigators found no proof that Bridger had killed April. Importantly, there was also no evidence supporting Bridger's account. Inspection of his vehicle, a Land Rover, revealed no marks, blood, hair, or skin, contradicting his claim that April's body should have left scratches or traces inside the car. Bridger tried to clarify by saying he did not witness any blood on April after the alleged collision. The child had apparently been run over, yet showed no visible injuries. But his narrative and the game he had been playing with the police was about to be exposed as a farce. On Friday night at 6:15 p.m., the lab contacted the detectives. They had matched April's toothbrush DNA to blood spatters found in Bridger's bathroom. They also discovered April's DNA on Bridger's fleece collar and jogging bottoms. After gathering sufficient evidence, the police filed charges against Bridger. They had found sexualized photos of minors on his laptop, which he denied viewing for personal satisfaction, despite his internet search history. Bridger had been in custody for 3.5 days by Saturday. As the allotted 96-hour questioning period neared its end, the Crown Prosecution Service had to decide whether to press charges. Just over an hour after the final interview, Bridger remained unfazed upon hearing the charges. There was no remorse or emotion from him. As the prison van arrived, angry bystanders hurled objects and insults at Bridger. Over the next 2 weeks, forensic investigators found increasing blood traces of April at Bridger's house, as well as several broken bones in his fireplace, though it could not be conclusively determined if they were April's due to decomposition. On May 30th, 2013, a jury found 47-year-old Mark Bridger guilty of April Jones' kidnapping and murder. The judge labeled him a chronic liar and pedophile, stating that April was likely not his intended target, but tragically happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Without hesitation, the judge sentenced Bridger to life in prison with no possibility of parole. Bridger maintained his claim that April's death was a horrific accident when his car struck her, but had long lost any credibility. April Jones was a typical young child full of potential whose life was tragically cut short by a single sick individual. Her family, while devastated, expressed relief that Bridger would never be free to harm another child. April's remains were never found in Bridger's house. Though 17 bone fragments were recovered, none conclusively linked to her. Her parents pushed for changes to how search engines handle illegal content, leading to new measures by companies like Google and Bing. April's family and friends will always have a void in their hearts that cannot be filled. Wish for them to be able to reconstruct their lives to the best of their abilities. On April 26, 2013, April's funeral service was held in her hometown. May April Jones rest in peace. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the depths of unsolved mysteries. Cold cases not only challenge our understanding of the past, but also ignite our curiosity and determination for answers. Remember to subscribe to stay updated on our latest investigations. And if you have any information regarding the cases we've covered, don't hesitate to reach out. Together, we can shed light on the shadows of the past and bring closure to those who seek it. Until next time, stay vigilant, stay curious, and never stop seeking the truth.